chained to an alien warlord who thinks surviving a firefight is a wedding vow. That was the headline Elias was currently writing in his head, mostly to keep from hyperventilating. But honestly, looking at the situation from the floor of the Void Anchor containment cell, he felt that was a bit reductive. She called it a tactical alliance. He called it the most aggressive first date in galactic history. The air in the cell tasted like ozone in stale recycled mint. It was quiet, that heavy, thick silence that comes right before everything goes wrong, or right after you realize just how much trouble you are in. Elias shifted his wrist, the metallic clink echoing too loudly against the sterile white walls. The energy shackle bound his left wrist to the right wrist of Vespera, in a Solari commander who looked like she was carved from obsidian and starlight. She was terrifying. She was also currently vibrating. "Stop moving," Vespera hissed, though it sounded more like the purr of a large predatory cat than a command. Her skin, usually a matte, light-absorbing black, was rippling with iridescent flashes of violet. Terran empathy, that gut instinct that told humans when a dog was sad or a roommate was hiding the last slice of pizza, kicked Elias right in the chest. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. Or maybe she was just cold. The cell was freezing. "I'm not moving," Elias whispered back, keeping his voice strictly in the indoor voice range. "I'm just trying to get comfortable." "You're trembling." "I am recalibrating my thermal regulation to match the output of the binding field," she corrected him sharply, her dual-pupilled eyes narrowing. "It is a precise biological function. It is not trembling." "Right. Biology." Elias shifted again, instinctively moving closer to her. It was a human instinct, purely subconscious. When something is shivering, you share warmth. He didn't think about the fact that she was a 7-foot-tall, lizard-bird humanoid hybrid capable of snapping a Durasteel pipe with her jaw. He just saw someone shivering. He draped his free arm, the one covered in the fabric of his flight jacket, over their joined wrists, creating a small pocket of insulation. Vespera froze. The violet ripples on her skin surged into a deep, flushed indigo. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice jumping an octave. "Insulating," Elias said, leaning his shoulder gently against hers. It was the human touch, mundane, practical, a completely devoid of tactical brilliance, just preserving heat. "If we're going to break out of here, you can't be shivering. It burns too many calories. My mom used to say you can't think clearly when your teeth are chattering." Vespera stared at him. To her, this wasn't insulation. This was overwhelming. Solari biology was solitary. They did not share heat. To share thermal energy was to admit a deficiency, a vulnerability that only a bonded mate would cover. And here was this soft, squishy Terran, blithely offering his own metabolic warmth like it was spare change. Cultural relativity is a tricky thing. Elias thought he was being a nice guy. Vespera thought he was initiating a soul-binding covenant of mutual preservation. "Your heart rate," she murmured, the ridges above her eyes flattening. "It is. Alarmingly slow." "Are you dying?" "No. I'm just trying to stay calm. Panic uses up oxygen." Adversity bonding usually takes weeks in the field, forged through mud and blood. But sitting here, knee to knee in the pulsating light of a prison cell, the timeline was accelerating. Elias felt the rough, scale-like texture of her skin against his wrist. It wasn't cold anymore. It was warming up, syncing with his temperature. "Truth is," Elias said, looking at the energy shackle that pulsed between them, "I don't know how to pick this lock. I'm a navigator, Vespera. I read maps. I don't hack plasma cuffs." "I do," Vespera said, her voice steadier now. The indigo flush on her scales was settling into a calm, rhythmic pulse that matched the beating of Elias's own heart. "But it requires this security cycle to reset. We have 30 seconds. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Not as a liability, but as a source of stability. The universe was chaos, entropy eating away at the edges of order. But this human was a fixed point. A warm, confusing, dangerously calm fixed point. When the cycle resets, the cuffs will flare, she explained, her voice dropping to a register that vibrated in Elias's chest. It will hurt. If you pull away, the feedback loop will sever your hand. Oh, Elias blinked. Good to know. Do not pull away, she commanded, her hand tightening around his fingers. It was an intimate, crushing grip. I won't, Elias promised. He squeezed back. It was meant to be reassuring, a simple squeeze of the hand. But for Vespera, the sensation sent a shock wave through her dual nervous systems. Xenobiology was funny that way, his soft, warm skin against her hard. Her cool palm felt like sticking a fork in an electrical socket, but in a good way, a really good way. The lights in the cell dipped. The hum of the energy field dropped in pitch. Now, Vespera whispered. She didn't pull away. She leaned in. She twisted their bound hands, manipulating the energy stream with a grace that defied the bulky shackles. Sparks showered down, harmless but bright, lighting up the sharp angles of her face. Elias didn't flinch. He just held on, acting as the anchor she needed, his thumb tracing a subconscious, soothing circle on the back of her alien hand. The shackles snapped open with a hiss. See? Elias breathed out, a nervous laugh bubbling up. Escape the station. Steal the ship. Easy, right? Vesper didn't let go of his hand. The shackles were gone, but she was still gripping him as if gravity had failed. Her eyes were wide, her pupils blown huge, taking in every photon of light reflecting off his face. She had just shared heat, survived pain, and synchronized her biology with another being. In her culture, the paperwork was already filed. Accidentally get engaged, she murmured, though Elias didn't catch the words over the sudden blare of the station's alarm. What? He asked, helping her up. Survival protocol initiated, she said, her tone snapping back to military precision, though she refused to release his fingers. We move. Together. She tugged him toward the door, which she had apparently unlocked during the spark shower. As they stepped out into the corridor, the red alert light spinning, Elias had the distinct feeling that he had missed a very important conversation, but there was no time for that. There was only the warmth of her hand, the terrified beat of his heart, and the very confusing realization that when "till death do us part" is the opening line, not the closing one, you really should read the fine print. The corridor was a blur of red warning lights and the distinct sizzling sound of plasma scorching the walls. Elias was running, which was bad, but he was running while holding hands with a 7-foot warrior goddess, which was arguably worse because she ran significantly faster than he did. We are going to die, Elias panted, his lungs burning. He wasn't trying to be pessimistic. He was just stating facts as a way to organize his terror. Humor as shield was a classic human defense mechanism. If you can make a joke about it, it can't kill you. That was the theory anyway. Incorrect, Vespera countered, yanking him around a corner just as a bolt of superheated energy slapped the bulkhead where his head had been a second ago. My mortality probability calculations have dropped to 40% since acquiring your thermal input. You are a good luck charm, Elias. I'm a talisman, he wheezed, stumbling over a loose grate. Great. Put that on my resume. They burst into the hangar bay. It was cavernous, echoing with the mechanical groans of the station, waking up to the riot. Across the expanse, a sleek, needle-nosed courier ship sat unguarded. It looked fast. It looked expensive. It looked like freedom. Between them and the ship, however, was a squad of station security drones. Vespera skidded to a halt behind a crate of rations. Her skin was flashing that violent indigo again, but her breathing was synchronized with his, a dual rhythm of panic and resolve. She looked at the drones, then down at Elias. She squeezed his hand so hard he felt his knuckles pop. This is the threshold, she said, her voice dropping to that vibrating register that made his teeth itch. The threshold of what? Getting shot? The threshold of the pact. She turned to him, ignoring the laser fire chipping away at their cover. In Solari doctrine, to spill blood together is an alliance. To share heat is a courtship. But to survive the void jump together? That is the seal. Elias stared at her. A drone buzzed overhead, raining sparks down on them. He should have been terrified. He should have been thinking about the lasers. But all he could focus on was the way her dual pupils were spinning, trying to focus entirely on him. Well, you're saying if we get on that ship, we're… What? Going steady? She leaned in, her forehead pressing against his. It was a gesture so intimate it felt heavier than the gravity plating. If we board that vessel, Elias, we are declaring to the universe that we are a single survival unit. Your enemies are mine. My warmth is yours. It is irrevocable. Elias looked at the ship. He looked at the drones. He looked at Vespera, who was waiting for his answer with the intensity of a collapsing star. He realized then that cultural relativity wasn't just about understanding different holidays. It was about understanding that sometimes survival and love were just two words for the same desperate thing. Well, Elias said, a crooked, terrified smile breaking across his face. I guess I'm a marrying man. A Vesper made a sound that might have been a laugh or a battle cry, scooped him up as if he weighed nothing more than a pillow, and sprinted. The next 10 seconds were a blur of motion, light, and the sickening sensation of zero gravity as Vespera launched them across the gap. They hit the courier ship's ramp with a clang that rattled Elias's bones. He scrambled for the airlock keypad, fingers flying over the interface, hacking the door with a speed born of pure adrenaline. The door hissed open. They tumbled inside. The airlock cycled shut, muffling the chaos outside into a dull thrum. Silence. Beautiful, heavy silence. Elias slumped against the bulkhead, sliding down to the floor. His chest was heaving. He felt lightheaded. He checked his limbs, still attached. He looked up. Vespera was standing over him. The indigo on her skin had faded to a soft, contentment-signaling teal. She wasn't looking at the controls. She wasn't checking the fuel levels. She was watching him. The ship hummed to life beneath them, lifting off, the artificial gravity kicking in. They were safe. They were away. So, Elias whispered, his voice cracking. That was intense. It was sufficient, Vespera corrected gently. She knelt in front of him. Her hands, tipped with razor-sharp claws, reached out and very carefully, very delicately, straightened the collar of his flight jacket. It was a gesture of possession. It was domestic. Adversity bonding had done its work. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a strange, quiet clarity. Elias looked at this terrifying, beautiful creature who had just dragged him through hell, and he didn't feel the urge to run. He felt the urge to make tea. You have a soot smudge, she murmured, brushing his cheek with her thumb. I'll wash it off later, Elias said. He didn't pull away. He leaned into her touch, the human instinct to find comfort winning out over the logic of the situation. So, we're a survival unit now? Until the stars burn out, Vespera said simply. Elias closed his eyes, listening to the hum of the stolen engine and the steady, dual thump of her hearts. It was absurd. It was terrifying. It was the best first date he'd ever had. I can live with that, he said. And as the ship punched a hole through the fabric of space, leaving the void anchor behind, Elias accepted the weight of the union. He didn't know where they were going or how he was going to explain this to his mother, but as Vespera settled down next to him, resting her head on his shoulder, he knew one thing for sure. He was never going to be cold again.